One.
In our last video, we looked at some arguments and we began to analyze them. And really, what that means is deciding what the conclusion is and what the premises are. These are simple arguments. And I have a reason for calling them simple as opposed to complex. Let's say that a simple argument is an argument that has only one conclusion. And in which all of the premises are basic. And what does that mean? Well, let's take our Charlton Heston argument, a very simple Charlton Heston argument, as an example. The conclusion of this argument is that Charlton Heston was history's greatest actor. And it is the only conclusion in the argument. That is, nothing else in the argument is argued for. So it's the only conclusion. And its premises that he starred in the greatest movie of all time, Planet of the Apes, and that he was a very convincing Mark Antony in Julius Caesar. Those premises are basic premises, which means what? They're pure assumptions, which means only that no argument is offered in support of them. Those are the starting points of the argument. So a simple argument is one in which there's really only one conclusion, and the premises that are offered in support of that conclusion are pure premises or basic premises. Premises are basic. Sometimes I use the expression pure, which is obviously a metaphor. So a pure premise or a basic premise is a premise for which no reason is given. It's a pure assumption. It's a simple assumption. It is stipulated as being true for the purposes of the argument. So in a simple argument, there's really only one conclusion, and the premises are pure assumptions. They're premises for which no reason is given. And all of these arguments here qualify as simple arguments for those reasons. Most arguments we come across are not simple. We can call them complex. Let's just say, for the purposes of developing some kind of terminology here, that a complex argument is an argument, let's say, in which we could say there is more than one conclusion, which would also mean that the premises are not all basic. Okay. That is, in a complex argument, we will find more than one inference. We will find more than one conclusion. In a complex argument, we will find that at least one of the premises that supports the main conclusion is not a basic assumption, but it is a premise for which some argument or some reasons are given. Which means, basically, a couple of things when we look at complex arguments. First of all, there will be conclusions which we will call intermediate, as opposed to a so there'll be more than one conclusion, but there will be one conclusion that will be the main or overall conclusion, the conclusion towards which the argument as a whole is pointing to, as opposed to intermediate conclusions, which are conclusions which also serve as premises, right? Which is, interesting. That is, in a complex argument, we'll see that some conclusions are also premises. They serve both roles. So intermediate conclusions are premises so that an intermediate conclusion is actually a premise that is argued for. So it's both a premise and a conclusion, but it's a premise that's argued for which reasons are given, but whose main function is to support the overall or main conclusion. So, okay, we'll start to analyze more complex arguments in the next video, but I just wanted to introduce this terminology. Let's review a little bit. There are simple arguments and there are complex arguments. Simple arguments are arguments that have only one conclusion and all the premises are basic or pure, meaning all the premises are merely assumptions for which no reason is given. A complex argument is an argument where there's more than one conclusion and not all the premises are basic. There's more than one conclusion, meaning that there's at least one intermediate conclusion, which is itself a conclusion of a little sub-argument, but is not the overall or main conclusion of the argument as a whole. And it can be considered a premise, but it's a premise for which reasons are given. But the main function of this premise, which is also an intermediate conclusion at the same time, is to support the overall or main conclusion. And again, so next video, we will actually look at more complex arguments and begin to analyze them, identifying intermediate conclusions or non-basic premises as opposed to pure premises and overall conclusions.